Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I began working at the KFC on Route 9 because I needed cash quick. My girlfriend was pregnant, rent was past due, and the job market wasn't so open to ex-cons. But I didn't complain. Clock in, clean up, cook chicken, go home. That was fine. Until my third week, the night I had dining room duty. Terry, the shift manager, took me aside during the pre-dinner rush and spoke in a strange way. If someone sits at table 17, you go find me. You do not serve them. Understood? I scanned the room. Table 17 was only a booth at the back of the restaurant, same as all the others, except for the diagonal crack in the window beside it. I chuckled. You're kidding. Terry didn't flinch. Dead serious. We got slammed that night. Church crowd, high school crowd, bikers from the gas station down the highway. It was bedlam. I had almost forgotten about the warning. Until 9:43 p.m., I was bussing trays when I saw him, sitting in table 17, middle-aged, gray suit, too clean to be seen in this establishment. He was positioned in front of the window, but there was nothing to see outside but pitch-black woods. He didn't move, didn't eat, just sat. I grabbed Terry as he instructed me to. He glanced at the man and stiffened, then whispered quietly, "Tell him we run out of food." "You do it," I replied. Terry shook his head. New hires only listened to him. I returned to table 17, heart pounding. The man still didn't turn around. "Sir, I apologize," I said. "We have all of..." His head whipped around towards me. He didn't have a face, no nose, no eyes, only a mouth, and that mouth wide opened, too wide. He said, "Then bring me your worst memory." I stood still. The man's voice sounded unnatural. It reverberated, as if it was coming from far down in the ground. The lights above table 17 were buzzing, flickering like an insect in a bottle. "Your worst memory," he again, his jaw opening wider still, the skin of his chin stretching and tearing a little. I don't know," I said. He leaned in. The area where his eyes ought to have been pulsed a little, as if something was shifting beneath the flesh. "You stole $300 from your dying mother," he whispered, "when you were 17. Do you recall the smell in her room?" My knees gave way. I hadn't said that to anyone, not even my girlfriend. He smiled. "Good. That'll do." Then leaned back, sat there absolutely still again. I retreated, shaking, and collided with Terry in the hallway outside the walk-in cooler. "What in the world is happening?" I barked. Terry didn't reply immediately. He looked ill, beading with sweat through his uniform, trembling slightly. "That thing comes up every couple months," he said. "Always 9:43. Always take seat 17. Don't offer him food. He's not hungry. He's hungry for guilt. If nobody feeds him, bad things happen." "What?" Terry looked up at the ceiling. Last time we didn't feed him, the cook discovered his wife's voice on the intercom. She had passed away 5 years ago. He stabbed himself in the deep fryer, attempting to silence it. Then suddenly, there was a scream from the front. We ran back. The man at table 17 had vanished. But where he had been sitting, the booth cushion was splattered with something dark and sticky. In the window next to it, scratched on the broken glass, was a message. "Not enough." My gut turned over. Terry slowly swung around to me. "Did you give him enough?" "I don't know," I said. "He just left." That's when the drive-through headset spluttered to life. It wasn't an order. It was my mom's voice. "Kyle," she breathed. "Why'd you take the money, baby?" I yanked the headset off, racing heart. From that night on, stuff changed. Each shift, I saw things. Reflected faces in the fryer oil. Gazing faces in the freezer door. My name written on the paper towel machine. And every so often, someone sat at table 17. Various shapes, various attire, but always the same request. "Bring me your worst memory." I attempted to quit. I actually did. But the application at the car repair place disappeared from my vehicle. The manager of Taco Bell informed me that my name was already flagged. And then there was the voicemail. It was Terry. Except his voice sounded wet, like he was talking underwater. He just said, "You're the new closer now." and hung up. Folks used to tease that our town's KFC served the best chicken in the whole state, but no one ever questioned why. No one ever questioned where the meat was from, not until my brother disappeared. It began with a picture, one of those vintage Polaroids stuffed with my grandma's mirror. I was dusting out the house after she died. Little country house, smelled of mothballs and fried oil. I discovered a box that read, 1973, do not open. It contained a dozen yellowed photographs, all snapped within the KFC on Pine Hollow Road, but not the KFC I was familiar with. This was one from an earlier era. The walls were dirty, the signs varied, and in each picture, behind the counter, stood a man in a chicken suit, not a mascot uniform, not the type you find at ballparks. This thing was off, too tall. The beak was pointed, like a taxidermy skull. The eyes weren't cartoon, they were real, dead, glassy. And the smile. God, that smile. The beak curved into a perpetual grin that stretched too far, like it had been sewn into the mask. Except it wasn't a mask, because in one picture, someone had written, "He only smiles when the meat is fresh." I laughed initially. I thought it was some twisted joke. But the following day, when I presented the photos to my mother, her face went white. She whispered, "You weren't supposed to see that." "What is it?" I asked. "Who's the man in the suit?" She didn't reply. She merely took the box, went outside, and burned it in the driveway. But then, later that evening, I received a text from my brother Kyle. "Heading to that abandoned KFC. Something's off." It was 1:12 a.m. I called, no response. I drove down to Pine Hollow in person. The KFC was still operating, but it shouldn't have been. The sign on the door read, "Closed at 10 p.m., but the lights were all lit, and the neon open hummed like it was all right. No cars in the lot, no workers to be seen. I opened the door. The bell over it rang, but it warbled, buried in static. In here, complete silence. Tables are immaculately clean, food trays stacked high, kitchen spotless, and in the center of the floor, under the red light of the soda machine, a lone Polaroid. My brother, standing in the freezer. Behind him, just visible, was the smiling chicken man, one feathered hand on Kyle's shoulder. I started to turn away, but the doors wouldn't budge, and at the back of the counter, something in a chicken costume stood up. I was frozen, watching the figure standing behind the counter. The costume was dirty, grease-soaked feathers, the beak yellow and cracked, twitching slightly as if it were chewing. The smile, broader now, stretched way beyond what was natural. It didn't walk like a man in a suit. It glided, its limbs unconnected and jerking with every step, as if the bones weren't quite under it. I recoiled, pounding on the door with my fists. Locked, no handle, no give. Behind me, the creature clicked, like a defective kitchen timer running down. Then there was the voice, not uttered, not human. "Fresh meat always brings the family back." The KFC lights flickered out suddenly. The floor was mushy, as if the tiles were crumbling beneath me. I spun around and ran, not for the door, but into the kitchen, where I had seen Kyle in the picture. The freezer door stood ajar. A faint light pulsed from within, a greenish light that seemed to beat like a heart. I went inside. It wasn't cold. Inside was a tunnel, curved, narrow, with red walls that throbbed and bled. It reeked of raw meat and fryer oil. And at the end, far away, Kyle, tied to a chair, eyes open but empty, like something had been scooped out of him. He slowly turned and whispered, "Don't smile. Don't smile or he finds your face." Then the lights above us exploded one by one, and I heard that hateful cluck, cluck, cluck behind me. I turned around, and he was there, the chicken man. Closer, it was worse. The beak quivered open, and within were not teeth, but chewed and rotting human fingers. His eyes rolled in different directions, black and wet. He didn't flee. He didn't have to. The walls shut behind me, trapping us in. I screamed and grabbed Kyle, attempted to lift him, but his skin flaked where I touched it, as if it wasn't supposed to be moved, as if he belonged there. The creature lifted its arm. It removed from under its feathers a new Polaroid. It flashed. I was blind for 1 second. When my eyes opened, I was no longer in the freezer. I was behind the counter, in a red polo. My hands were smeared with something black. My face was tight, pulled into a grin I couldn't shed. A cluster of children waited at the counter. They laughed, Great costume, man. I attempted to scream, but all that emerged was a cluck, and from the edge of my vision, in the freezer window, I caught a glimpse of another figure, another one, like me, waiting for a turn. I worked the night shift at our town's KFC because it paid more than waiting tables. And anyway, nothing much was going on after 10 p.m. in a place like ours. Just drunk teenagers and the occasional strange loner who needed a chicken sandwich at midnight. My manager, Theo, was a gruff, no-nonsense guy who always wore sunglasses indoors. Said the lights gave him migraines. He trained me on my first night, walking me through the closing process like he'd done it 1,000 times, which, to be fair, he probably had. You mop the floors, dump the grease, wipe the counters, lock the freezer. That's it, he stated. Oh, and never open the walk-in freezer if the lights flicker. Got it? I chuckled, assuming he was being facetious. Why? Does the Colonel live in there? He didn't chuckle. Just don't. I figured it was some crazy hazing nonsense, but he was serious. Dead serious. 2 weeks passed, and the work was largely uneventful. Dull, actually. That is, until last Tuesday. I punched in at 9:56 p.m. Theo wasn't around. Odd, but not bad. A message from him said, "Emergency. You'll close alone. Just follow protocol." Whatever. I tied back my hair, put on my apron, and began to work. By 11:45, the dining room was deserted. The drive-thru speaker crackled with static occasionally, but no orders were received. It was abnormally quiet. Even the fryer wasn't frying. Then the lights flickered. I was wiping down the prep table when this happened. A sudden stutter. Just a blink. But when they flickered back to life, one of the chairs in the dining room was pushed out. I promise I hadn't worked on that part yet. I gazed at it for a second, then went and pushed it back in. The moment I turned around, flicker. When the lights came back up this time, 3 chairs were out. I froze. The kitchen had a different smell now. Not the usual grease and spices. It smelled old, damp, wet soil and freezer burn. My gaze wandered to the little window in the freezer door. Something was standing in there. A silhouette, tall, back to the glass. No movement, no breath. I took a step toward the freezer. Every step felt wrong. My fingers shook as I reached for the handle. I reminded myself that I'd open it quickly, check to make sure no one was inside, and close it once more. Perhaps a reflection. Perhaps I was exhausted. That's all. But as I reached out to touch the handle, the lights went out entirely. Pitch black. And then, the tread of wet, heavy footsteps coming up behind me. I didn't budge. Those footsteps did indeed exist. Slow, measured. One after the other. Greasy soles on tile, like something just emerged from the fryer pit. I tried to reach for my phone, but it was no longer in my pocket. I had left it next to the register. Genius. I couldn't see a thing. I was stuck in the dark, one hand still grasping the freezer handle, the other balled up into a fist at my hip. I pushed myself to talk. "Hello?" My voice broke. "We're closed." No answer. Only the quiet squeak of a chair moving across the dining room floor. I whirled and ran back to the front counter, my heart thudding so loudly I couldn't hear anything else. I took the flashlight from under the register, blackout procedure standard issue, flicked it on. Nothing in the lobby. Chairs were all in position. I panned the beam through the kitchen. Stainless steel countertops glinted like mirrors. Fryers, sinks, the soda machine, empty. Then the beam caught the freezer window, empty. The form was lost, and the door, ajar. A shiver of cold air swept over my face. My fingers became numb at once. The light from the interior flickered weakly, sending shadows dancing over the rows of frozen chicken package bags and plastic containers. Then, from within the freezer, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 knocking beats. As if something, or someone, was pounding from the interior of the back wall. I stepped closer and something cracked under my foot. I glanced down. Greasy footprints. But not mine. These were bigger, bare feet. They glittered in the beam of the flashlight and walked from the freezer to the fryer station, and then just stopped. Mid-tile, like someone disappeared mid-step. I couldn't catch my breath. I retreated toward the door. Forget the closeout checklist. Forget Theo. That's when the drive-thru speaker crackled. Bucket of souls. Please. It didn't even sound like a human being. Words were mangled, empty, like they'd been scraped across shattered glass. I slammed the headset off the counter and ran for the back door. The door wouldn't move. Dead bolted. I tried the front, locked from the inside. All the keys were in Theo's office. And Theo's office? The door was open now. Light spilling out, though I hadn't touched it. I walked slowly, flashlight shaking in my hand. Inside, the monitor screens were flickering, CCTV loops jerking and twitching. Camera 4 was the lobby, chairs pulled out. Camera 5 was the walk-in freezer. The door stood all the way open now, and the figure crouched in the corner of the freezer, chewing slowly on something unidentified. Bones, pink and wet. And then it stared at the camera. Its eyes were black as coal. The monitor went dead. I took a step back, and something cold wrapped around my ankle. I glanced down. A long, white arm had slid out from under the fryer. It wasn't grabbing me. It was pointing to the freezer. I broke free from the hand and scrambled backward, sending a mop bucket over on my way. Water spread out across the floor, joining a thin trickle of something red that ran out from beneath the fryer. My breathing was shallow, ragged. I should have passed out by now. But something more primal than fear was keeping me alert. Something that lay deep inside. That hand hadn't attempted to harm me. It had only pointed at the freezer. The same freezer that Theo warned me never to open if the lights flickered. I should have left, smashed a window, burned the goddamn building down. But something in me, perhaps curiosity, perhaps insanity, drew me back towards the heavy metal door. It hung wide open now, like an open mouth in the earth's floor. The cold slapped me in the face like a wall. Ice crystals had accumulated across the ceiling. The light within hummed, flickering with a blue color that gave everything the appearance of being bruised. I walked in. That's when I saw them. Uniforms, rows of them. Red polo shirts, name tags, dozens, dangling from hooks like spoils. Some were speckled with frost. Others appeared, fresh. The reek of raw flesh greeted me, and it was not chicken. And there, in the back, a hatch, tiny, metal, nearly concealed behind a tower of stale biscuit mix. I have no idea why I opened it. Inside, a stairwell. Going down, far deeper than any fast food basement should exist. Cold air poured up from it, along with the sound of wet dragging, and whispers. Whispers of names. My name. I descended. Each step creaked. Lights flickered overhead, cheap bulbs attached to exposed wire. The stairwell turned, curved, kept spiraling. At the bottom, a massive room. It looked like an ancient butcher's chamber. Stone walls, hooks, slabs. In the center, a table. On the table, a ledger. I drew nearer. The names within weren't orders from customers. They were employees. Dozens of them over the years. Next to every name was a column labeled Chosen. I went to the back page. There it was. My name. Double circled. Something moaned behind me. I spun around, and there he was. Theo. But it wasn't just Theo anymore. His jaw was out of joint, too loose, skin greasy to the touch. His eyes were sunken but ablaze with a red glow like smoldering embers. He moved like something donning a human skin suit, struggling to maintain the form. "You made it," he wheezed. "We were hoping you would." He sidestepped, and behind him, the others stepped out. KFC people, eyes empty, mouths hanging open, their heads jerked abnormally, like puppets on strings being yanked by unseen hands. Theo leaned in close, and I could smell the decay on his breath. "This place sustains the town," he said, "and someone always has to sustain it back." That's when the lights flickered off once more, and the only sound I could hear was the whine of meat being sliced and the fryer bubbling.